Hey guys, Stealth here. Looking at a Red Dragon's Mechanized deck today. It was sent in by NoMeansYes, and as he writes in the description of the deck, and quite accurately I think, I've never done a review on a Red Dragon's deck. I've definitely never showed you one on the channel that was mine, not a deck nor a replay. So that's what I'm going to be going for next, but first we're going to have a look at this deck, see if it can do what it was designed to do, which is to use decently priced units with good damage dealing potential supported by infantry to make a coordinated push using numbers as a weapon. He also writes, if beaten back, the tank destroyers and reconnaissance tanks can provide strong anti-tank fire while you gather your forces to strike again. Okay, so I'm not sure if he wants to use this on, for example, a 10v10 map or something like a 2v2. I'm going to have to keep in mind that it has to be able to do both. Now, Mechanized gives you a lot of good IFVs and APCs, so a lot of good infantry vehicles. You'll also get access to quite some decent tanks, as you're going to see later on, and we get a nice variety of support. So let's see what we can do with this deck. Command-wise, he has 7 UAZs, and this is telling me that he's not planning on taking this deck very far into an aggressive position, or at least not a CV. Maybe the YW701 would be a slight upgrade. We still get 5 of those, but you do get a nice amount of armor for 20 points more. So instead of using the UAZ, I'm going to go for this one, because I have found that they do survive artillery fire just a bit better. Then one of those huge helicopters, the Mi-6, provided they're not the biggest. Those are, I believe, the Mi-26 with their 6,000 units of supplies. But we get a nice amount of them, we get 4. And with these 4 we get a lot amount of supplies which you can use to set up, well, pretty much a temporary fob wherever you need it. Then we can shuttle those supplies using this cargo truck. Let's see if that's the best. Yeah, it doesn't matter, these things are exactly the same, they just look different. You can then shuttle these supplies from whatever helicopter you have towards your infantry or other units that need supplies. So that looks all solid. Then you fly your Mi-6 back to a fob, and I think that's logistics covered. Now let's have a look. Infantry. What we're going to have to look at is not only the infantry unit but also the transport, because in a mechanized deck the transport is pretty much half the battle. You want to have these things be very good because they are very important in a mechanized deck to either support your infantry or to just use their own weapon systems to go after the enemy. So for starters, he has Legion 90s in the Z9A. Helicopter wise or transport wise, you got the Z5, which is a terrible helicopter. Dead slow at 180. I have seen some road vehicles do better than this helicopter. I know that that's unlikely because a helicopter is traveling at 180 while road vehicles will only go 150 max. But these things just feel so incredibly slow. So the Z9A is definitely better. And you also get autocannons with this helicopter. You can see them here mounted on the side skirts of the helicopter. Definitely a nice unit, and the Legion 90s will be capable of wiping out any infantry that gets in the way. Then he has a couple of tank shoes. Recoilless rifles. Not the best. They're 5-man teams. They can engage infantry as well with their HE power. Armor penetration of 16 is not bad for a 15-point unit. They are only 5-man squads, so don't engage directly with other infantry squads if you want to live. We've got Legions to do that. They are transported by the ZSD-63A. There's not a lot of options here. You get the C version of the A version. Let's see, the C version, well, it's exactly the same price, has a bit more speed and a bit more armor. Availability wise, it doesn't matter either, so I'm going to change those up a little. Then we got ATGMs, the real ATGMs, as compared to the tank shoes. So these fagots, let's see if that's the best anti-tank one we can get, and the answer is unfortunately yes. He has 14 of these at veteran, which will help them with their accuracy. And we definitely need that accuracy because the range on these is pretty terrible. A range of 2600 will mean that your infantry might be able to get 2 shots off before they start taking fire. If you have a range of 2450, there's a good chance you'll be able to get 1 shot off before you're going to take fire. Because the missile takes time to reach the target, and if that tank is coming right for you, and it doesn't die to 1 hit from the fagot, which is very likely because it only has 16 armor penetration, you're going to take fire. So having a high amount of these is probably going to be helpful. Next up, QW1s, which are a nice AA unit. They have a good range, decent range against airplanes, good accuracy, 5 HE missile, which means that they can do a lot of damage. Some of the NATO reconnaissance helicopters, like for example the Gazelle, have an HE or have a strength of 4, which means that these things can shoot them down in one go. They just have to hit once, and that makes them very valuable. They already have a decent base accuracy, so we don't really need to upvet these guys. I'm just going to stick with them at at hardened. Transport for these is the ZSD-63C, so again, not a great transport in the sense that it doesn't carry an autocannon. Moving up, the fagots I discussed. Time for the Bongongzus, which are the line infantry. They carry a slightly outdated RPG-7, which only has 14 armor penetration, so don't expect to go through super heavies directly. The range on these is not terrible, but don't expect them to do any miracles, and their accuracy with only 6 rockets carried by this squad means that they are not that likely to hit. So as you keep that in mind, you're going to have to use these as line infantry / reserve line infantry, because they're not that good. Their transport though is interesting. This is one of the few transports that has an AA missile. It carries these 9 M31s, which have terrible accuracy, a decent range for an AA missile at 2450, 4 HE, and the vehicle itself is okay. It has some armor, it has a decent off-road speed. It does come with a medium machine gun, firing 14.5mm rounds, which have an armor penetration. Keep that in mind, as you can use these things to destroy armor, but you're going to have to be sitting practically right next to it. And by armor I mean you're going to defeat the armor of any IFV or APC, provided it's not something heavy like a Warrior or a Martyr 3. Martyr 2, never mind. Next up, he has a lot of Zanshis. I think he has way too many Zanshis, considering that we also have 14 Bongongzus here. The Zanshi are slightly better than the Bongongzus, and he is using the Zanshi 85s. You can see that their assault rifle is exactly the same. No difference here at all. The weapon that they use, the Type 69-1 Law, is better in the sense that it has 4 more armor penetration. But still there's not really any high armor penetration infantry in this deck, so that's something I'm going to be looking at. And then the machine gun that they carry, the LMG, they are pretty similar, with, I suppose you could say, some slight advantage in rate of fire for the Type 67, and the Type 73 has a slightly better accuracy, so it doesn't really matter. Now, considering that we already have 14 of these, 19 of the standard Zanshi with a ZSD 90 transport, this is definitely the vehicle that you're going to be using, because those autocannons can be extremely annoying. You can pretty much consider these a martyr. That's the way I look at them. Some armor, a decent autocannon with decent accuracy, armor penetration, HE power, high rate of fire. Pretty much a poor man's martyr. So we're definitely going to throw out this second group of Zanshi 85s. And let's see, we could go for Yukon Day 90s. Unfortunately, they're being transported by the Mi-4. This is a helicopter that I really don't like, as it's way too slow, does not have a lot of strength, does not come with a weapon. But the Yukon Day that they carry are nice infantry, because finally we have some armor penetration which is higher than 20. With these you also get a 10-man squad, good weapons, the AK-74U and the RPD. If you support your Legion 90s with a squad of these guys, you're going to have a good mix, because if you remember that I did a push through once and harbor once with Spetsnaz and VDVs, this is pretty much your comparable force. Yukon Day 90s, which are by training better than VDV 90s, since these guys are elite and VDVs only have shock level, and your Legions are going to be wiping out anything that gets in the way infantry wise. Let's see if this is really the best option. Legion base are not that interesting. They're great against infantry, but you're going to have to sacrifice that FHG-84 napalm launcher, and you gain the RPG Type 69, which is not stellar. Let's see what other units we can get. Korsuns, by the way, not that special, not that great at transport. I was hoping we would get some better transports. Bit disappointing. So yeah, I'm going to have to go with the Yukon Day 90s in this case, because I want something that has higher armor penetration than whatever other infantry I have. So we're definitely going to go with one of these cards. And I'm considering completely eradicating the Bongongzu, but it means that I'll be losing a lot of AA capacity. And these things are ideal at countering an airborne push, because they're so cheap, only 20 points. And you get some infantry for another 10 points. So for now I'm going to stick with these. Support wise, he has the PGZ-95. This, I suppose you could compare it to the Gepard. It has pretty much the same stats, good accuracy, good range against helicopters and airplanes. And like the Gepard A2, they carry an AA missile, which is infrared. You don't need a radar on this vehicle to fire this missile. So if you have SEAD coming in, or if you just don't want to be targeted by SEAD at all, just turn off that radar, so turn off this weapon, and it will still use these QW2s, which are definitely lethal against helicopters with a good range, decent HE power, and 4 missiles to fire them. For support AA guns, he has the PGZ-88, which are nice and cheap, and they can still do a lot of damage to helicopters quite fast. Their accuracy is not as good as the one on the PGZ-95. You can see that the accuracy here is 50% versus 45%, and they completely lack a stabilizer, so you will have to stop these things and aim them. But they carry a lot of frontal armor, decent amount of side, back and top armor, and with that you're going to have a pretty damn heavily armored anti-air vehicle. So if you're dealing, for example, with a helo push and you have rocket pods being fired at you or some ATGMs, these things can actually survive, where the PGZ-95 can't. So I'm definitely keeping these things in. Let's see, availability wise, we get 5 of these, and we get 7 of these guys. With 12 AA guns, that should be enough. If you run out, you can always switch these back after the battle to 10. But considering that we also have those AA missiles on the VTT-323, we should be fine. Next up, Pongay 3. Again an AA unit for helicopter defense. I mean, they can also do airplanes, but it's a low range. So what I'm looking for is a better missile platform, but unfortunately the Pongay 3 is the only one we're getting. So that's going to be a bit of a weak spot in this deck. The amount of long range AA is not that high. And then he has some VTT-323s, mortar carriers. I would definitely go with 7 of these, because with 7 you can deploy more fire. You don't have to rearm these things very often, since they carry 60 rounds, and you can deploy smoke screens faster. In the tank section, you get access to remarkably good tanks for a mechanized deck. You get access to the ZTZ-85-3. Now these are prototype units from 1995, and for a 145 point tank they're very nice. Nice amount of frontal armor of 19, an extremely heavy gun which does 22 armor penetration, so the chances of penetrating the frontal armor of almost any tank in the game are good, and it is actually very likely to hit with 65% accuracy. So take as many of these things as you can get, and that's exactly what NoMeansYes did. He took 5 of these at trained. Then we get some slightly inferior tanks, the ZTZ-85-2A. Comparing these quickly, you can see that the accuracy is worse, armor penetration is worse. You lose 5 points of armor, and that's definitely significant. Your autonomy goes up to 900 from 720, but 720 is enough. I'd rather take the armor. And off-road speed is slightly worse, 5 kph worse. But they're still decent tanks, and he has 16 of these, all at hardened veterancy. And then a couple of ZTZ 85-2s. Again, the cheaper version of the 2A. Same type of mobility, 2 points less armor, a little bit less armor penetration, and 5% less accuracy on the stabilizer and the main gun as it's sitting still. So a good selection of tanks here. Other units that you could consider, T-72M. I'm not a big fan of these compared to the ZTZ 85s because the ZTZs have a better rate of fire. By 1 they got a little bit less armor penetration. Actually the 18 armor penetration on this gun is nice, but I don't like the lack of a stabilizer. Let's see what other units we can get. The Type 59 2A. I know it says ZTZ, but it's pretty much a Type 59. They're not great tanks either, but for 45 points you do get a 16 armor penetration gun and some armor. So if you feel that you need some more cheap armor in here, go for the ZTZ 59 2A. Reconnaissance, a couple of Leerens and Z98. You want to deploy this reconnaissance infantry quickly, so good choice there. You get some very nice reconnaissance tanks slash tank destroyers. They're officially classed as armored recon. I would just call them a reconnaissance tank. For a 60 point reconnaissance unit they have very good stats. Good armor penetration, good accuracy on the gun, nice amount of ammunition of 34, medium stealth, 65 or 60 kph, and very good optics. So it's unfortunate that this is a prototype unit, otherwise I would take 2 cards of these because they're that good. Reconnaissance helicopter wise, you get access to the MI2 or the MI1. Neither option is very appealing. The MI2 is slightly faster, and I think that that's all that is the difference between these two helos. The strength is 4, which means you got to be really careful as you're going to take fire from manpads. Infantry AA is going to kill you in 1 shot. No armor to speak of, very low speed on either of these helicopters, and autonomy is pretty bad at 440. Keep that in mind, as an MI2, as a recon helicopter will move around quite a bit, and this means that you will have to refuel it at some point. And then the last reconnaissance unit he has is the BRDM-2. He went with 14 of these for very cheap reconnaissance. Keep in mind that these guys are actually cheaper than your recon infantry. These guys cost you 20 points plus 25 for the helicopter. These are only 15. And you can pretty much spread these out all over the battlefield as you see fit. Another unit that you could consider is the M1992. I like having this unit around because it has a nice mix of anti-infantry and anti-tank weaponry. Concours for the anti-tank slash anti-vehicle because they only have 20 armor penetration. And a grenade launcher if you want to back up your infantry with more anti-infantry weaponry. They are amphibious, just like the BRDM-2. They got very good optics versus good. They are 3 times as expensive, and you only get 5 of these. Now considering we already have 33 units, but that's mostly due to the BRDM-2, we can afford to lose some, but not too many preferably. This reconnaissance jeep is not that good. Comparing it to the BRDM, I would still take the BRDM-2 because even as they're almost the same, this thing has some armor. Actually, why the hell would you take the ZZC-56? And this thing's amphibious, the BRDM-2. It has that going for it. It has more armor. It has better autonomy. It has better off-road speed. It's small versus medium. And the weapon is exactly the same. So just ignore what I said earlier and go for the BRDM-2 because this thing is significantly worse. Other units, a very cheap reconnaissance tank or reconnaissance unit here. Yeah, you don't really get that many interesting options. So we're just going to stick to the BRDM-2. In the vehicle tab we got 10 napalm tanks, If you've seen me play replays or do replays, you know that I really, really like these tanks, and I rarely leave for the battle without them if I can get them. PTZ 89s are nice tank destroyers. For 65 points, you get a unit which has high accuracy, a very high armor penetration gun of 21. Some armor, although it's not stellar. Autonomy is something you need to keep an eye on, because 450 means that depending on the terrain and the map size, you're going to have to refuel these things. 60 kph off-road's not bad for a tracked vehicle, so nice there. And you can get up to 12 if you want to, or 24 even if you're going to go with 2 cars of these. I think 8 veterans should be enough, especially if you combine these with tanks, where tanks take out the lesser targets and these take out the major targets. And then some ZDF 89s. These are pretty significant anti-tank units because they have a high range. There's not that many units in the game which have a range of 2800, carry 8 missiles and have 24 armor penetration. So for extreme range tank engagements, I will definitely be taking a couple of these. And there's not a lot of other vehicles that you would want to use here. You get this unit, which is a anti-tank jeep. It's not that good, but then again, it's only 25 points. So you can get, for example, 14 of these and spread them out all over the map to have an extreme anti-tank coverage. You could go for the ATS 103. It's a lot cheaper than the PTZ 89, and I feel that the PTZ definitely warrants its price in all respects. We got some ancient units like the SU 100. I'm not gonna look at those either. If you want to go even older, you got the SU 76, and sometimes you even see people using these. Now in helicopters you get a decent amount of options, but since we only have 55 activation points and he spent a lot of those points in air, we don't have any more points available, so the only ones that he has are the long-range anti-tank helicopters. Let's see, we don't exactly get access to those AA helicopters, unfortunately, since it's a mechanized deck. What I would like to get in here is something like the Mi-25, because they are very cheap for an Mi gunship, only 60 points. They got the Yak B versus infantry. They got rocket pods versus vehicles, and these terrible ATGM, but that's why they're so cheap. So if I can liberate 2 more points somewhere, I'm going to see if I can get a helicopter or 2 in here. Also, MD500D AGS-17, also known in the US decks as Little Birds, are helicopters that I would like in here, because I feel that the infantry or anti-infantry capacity in this deck could use some help. And then we got the Legions, and then we got some autocannons, we got the napalm tanks, but still, I like these grenade launching units. Now in the air, there's of course the Minotaur B5 super heavy bomber, 15 strength, an HE bomb of 3000 kilograms, doing 30 HE, highest in the game. Keep in mind that the turn radius of these is pretty much half the map, because the turn radius is 600, they got no ECM, they got no armor. But that's what you got, a combination of the B5, the Su-27 SK, and the Fibow for. Let me explain. Fibow is an anti-radar plane, which has high ECM, good turn radius or decent turn radius of 400, and it's likely to actually get out of a fight and take out radar sources so that the B5 can come in. For additional lightning rods, if you will, you got the Su-27 SK, and with this you got a very good air superiority fighter, great turn radius of 300, ECM of 40%, exceptional air detection, semi-active Vimples, so you will need to stay in the arena or in the battle zone, whatever you want to call it, until these missiles impact, otherwise they'll just miss. And you got a couple of short-range AA missiles. You can get 2 of these at trained, which I think is well enough, and I think that that is pretty much the best air superiority fighter that we can get in this deck. It's definitely the most expensive one. Yeah, this is definitely the best one. And then he has some Q5Ds. These are super accurate bombers because they carry laser guided HE bombs. This means that they will not do a lot of damage versus a bigger group. That is something that we have to keep in mind. We don't have any group engagement weapon other than the B5, of course. So with the B5, the Q5D and the 5 bows or SU-27SK to provide ECM, I think that we have enough units. Maybe we have too many 5 bows, but these are such nice aircraft. I don't, however, think that it warrants having 2 in here. Reason for that is that we don't have that many aircraft. If you were to use, for example, an airborne deck, go with 2 of these 5 bows because you want to be able to clear the way for enemy or for your own aircraft to come in. But we're going to be paying 5 points in order to get 1 5 bow in, and I think that's too expensive. So I'm deleting 1, and that should still be enough to clear the way, attack some anti-air units so that the B5 or the Q5D can come in. Now, let's see, I can spend those 5 points at another aircraft, but I don't think that's the best use. Considering that we can get vehicles, infantry for 1 point, or additional helicopters for 2 points. So I'm going to go for the Mi-25 to make sure I get those rocket pods and the Yak-B. I'm going to also revisit vehicles to see if there were any other interesting units in here. We can get some more PTZ-89s. I'm thinking of using these guys as ambushers because they're very, very capable of doing that. So another point spent there. Leaves me with 2 points. I can get 2 more units of infantry in here. I can get another helicopter or another vehicle. Well, vehicles we got enough. We got 33, which should be plenty. So let's see about infantry. I think we should have a very heavy infantry force here to make sure we can engage pretty much whatever the enemy throws at us. We're going to be ruling the towns with this deck. So with that I can go for an additional card of Yukon Day 90s and an additional card of Lijians. And with that you got a very, very heavy anti-infantry capacity. So much so that you probably won't even need the Bongongzus. You're not even going to notice that they're gone. So those are out, and I know that that is going to cost me the VTTs, but I'm going to save that, or I'm going to fix that in another way. I deleted the first Legion, by the way, so that I have all of these units lined up properly, so I know exactly what I have in the deck without going Legion. Oh wait, there's another Legion. Then 2 Yukon Day 90s, even with their terrible helicopter, and then some anti-aircraft infantry. Unfortunately, you can only get 1 of these grade QW1, so the secondary would be the standard Igla. Not great, but they get the job done. With 7 of these, we should be able to have enough AA capacity in here, and that tops us off at exactly 100 infantry units. So a few changes here, mostly because I freed up 1 air slot. Let's see about the shipping. He went with the MiG-29K. I see people getting these in the deck pretty often, but I find myself almost never using them and almost never keeping them in, because they have a pretty bad range of 4375, and in that time they're going to be still closing on the enemy ship, which means that the ship is going to have an increasingly good chance of getting in range and doing some damage, or just shooting your airplane down altogether. So in this situation I will keep them in. I doubt I'll be using them, and if I do use them I'll give my feedback to you afterwards. Some more 5 bows with anti-ship missiles. Now these things I do like. Good range, 2 missiles, good ECM, and can even be used as long-range air superiority fighters if they have to. Then he has 1 Udaloy and a couple of Jangyu 3s and some Munas to keep everything supplied. If you want to bring in the Udaloy, first bring in Jangyu 3s in a group. You can get 3 Jangyu 3s for the price of 1 Udaloy. Combining these is going to be much more effective than bringing in 1 Udaloy for anti-missile defense. So never let me catch you sailing this thing out alone, because I will sink it. So that is the Red Dragon's mech review. Let's see how this thing is going to perform. I'm going to play a couple of games, get a good replay for you up, and let you know how the thing performs. So with that, it's the end of the video. I hope you liked it. If you want to use it, the deck code's in the description down below, as always. If you want me to have a look at your deck, send it in through my website, and the link to that's in the description. And if you have any suggestions on how to improve this deck further, I look forward to hearing from you in the comments. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.